Here we are, Nicky. That time of year again, an exciting time of the season when we can look forward to the next 6 or 7 months ahead, and obviously a brilliant campaign for you last year, highlighted by the likes of Shishkin, Constitution Hill, and Jonbon. Let's start off with Constitution Hill. It's been quite well publicised what the plan is for him this year. I suppose my question to you is, how hard a decision was it to stay down the hurdles route?
It was unanimous. I mean, I think there was a sort of triumvirate, really. Obviously, Michael, Nico, and myself. And to be fair, I think we were all. It was a unanimous decision. Simply, really, on the fact that we're asking ourselves the question, will he stay 3¼ miles round Cheltenham? Because there was the only point of going chasing is if you thought he could win a Gold Cup. Our own opinion was that if he jumped fences, there'd be no worry about that. It was just whether he'd stay, and I think we all agreed that he wouldn't. Or it was unlikely that he would. I mean, if you could run around breaking course records over 2 miles, you're unlikely to stay 3¼
So there was never the thought of going down the 2-mile novice chase?
Well, there's no point. You've got 5 Grade 1 races over hurdles. You haven't even got 5 Grade 1 novice chases, so it wasn't going to achieve anything. And you finish up with the Arkle instead of the Champion Hurdle as your objective. So there really was nothing to be gained. People might say it's boring, but actually the amazing thing is that from what I'm listening to, everybody, literally everybody, bar I think about 2 people in the press, but if you listen to public opinion, everybody agrees.
I suppose it's a case of...
I've had nobody say, nobody, everybody said that was the right decision.
I suppose it's a case of, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Exactly, there's nothing to be gained.
Did you ever score him over a fence?
No. I mean, we haven't scored anything over a fence yet because it's too firm. But we came to the conclusion, we had to get on and make our mind up. It was, it was being silly dragging it on like it was. And I think we'd all come to the same conclusion. So we just, let's get on with it because we want to know where and when we want to start.
So that's obviously the question. It's a path that you've tread with many of your Unibet Champion Hurdlers before. So we like to see him kick off at Newcastle.
Yeah. I mean, there are only 5 races in the calendar he can run in. But you can't find 5 novice chases to run him in.
And of course, you've got the new Unibet Hurdle at Cheltenham on Festival Trials. That could come into the equation.
Yeah, I mean that's a very attractive part of the reprogramming, and it's sensible because actually, as the international there in the middle of December has achieved nothing. Yes, it's not actually a Grade 1, but I'm sure Unibet can make sure it is.
We've seen him this morning, as you've said, and it's been well publicised. He's a very relaxed horse. He seems to just go about his daily chores every day, no worries at all. Has he changed at all, though, over the last season or so? Because I suppose as he's grown in stature, is he any different to train or to look at?
No, none whatsoever. He's just starting to wake up a little bit as we're starting to do some sharper work. He's bulkier. We had a fascinating time with a boxer that came down to be photographed with him. I mean, they were 2 of the most amazing physiques you've ever seen in your life. At the time, we were rather... Constitution was rather fat. This boxer was unbelievable, but he's starting to look like the boxer now as he's muscling up and taking a bit more shape, and you could see that coming out in his work as it builds up. He's getting sharper and keener, and he's looking more like a racehorse than a oversized, retired sort of. He's just very laid back about the whole thing. And
I suppose a horse who's not on the complete opposite as Constitution Hill, but he's a little bit more on his toes and slightly more temperamental would be Jonbon. He just sort of, as I said, he just tends to look at what's happening and be a lot more on the ball, I suppose. With him, you sort of established now that 2 miles is the route you're going to go down and stay down. Is that correct? I'm
not sure I'd say stay down.
Right.
I think it's where we'll start. I'm still toying with the idea of the Schlur. AP was here on Saturday, and he looked sharp and well, Jonbon. It's interesting. I originally thought, well, that comes close enough. It's only 3 weeks before the Tingle Creek. But if you go back to last year, we ran him. He had 3 quite quick races, and he had 1 very quick return from Aintree to the celebration chase at Sandown, which really probably was his best performance. In that, really, I wanted to establish whether he was a 2-miler, and that's what he told us at Sandown on the last day. So I'm taking that as that you can at least start in the Tingle Creek. If you have to go up, you go up. But I definitely felt after Cheltenham he wanted to go another half a mile. But it was interesting, and that was the plan, to go 2.5 at Aintree. But the 2-mile novice chase at Aintree was so much more straight. Well, it was just an easier race, full stop, than the 2.5. So we left him at 2 for Aintree. That was fine. He was really good. And then, literally it was a very un-Seven Barrows-like ploy to bring him out. I think it was only 13 days later, into a Grade 1 against the older horses. And that was the whole point. See how he measured up against those. I know the Champion Chaser wasn't there, but the 2nd, 3rd and 4th were. And, he beat them comfortably enough. So we'll start at 2. But no, I wouldn't rule out going 2.5 at all. And I would think it'll help him.
And we saw that good smash up with Shishkin and Urigamin at Ascot a couple of years ago. And I suppose it could end up being a similar story with Al Fabiola and Jonbon again, hopefully, throughout the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, we're 1-1 at
You want to try and avoid him, I suppose, but never know. You might not be able to avoid him if he comes over for the Tingle Creek.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking.
There'd be some great races if those two could line up, possibly.
Well, it would be interesting, yeah. I don't think we were, take nothing away from Al Fabiola, but I don't think we were probably at our best at Cheltenham. Certainly didn't jump as well as he did, say, at Sandown.
I'm just touched there on Shishkin. Obviously, was very, very good at Aintree on his final start of the campaign, and I would assume sort of all roads will lead back to Cheltenham for the Gold Cup. Is that be right?
Well, I think our only objective at the moment is the King George, and that'll tell us where to go after that. Yeah, we started the last season thinking we were a 2-miler and starting in the Tingle Creek, and it blatantly wasn't the case. And we upped him to 2.5 at Ascot. He couldn't have been better, and consequently, he got beaten in the Ryanair. So we upped it again to 3 miles at Aintree, and he was very, very good. So that's where we'll start the campaign. Although you'd have to start somewhere else. I would think the Betfair is probably the most likely place, but we'll just have to see. He wouldn't be ready for the Charlie Halls, so I should think it'll be Haydock.
Do you feel he's better, or he's proven effective over 3 miles now because he's able to get into a nice rhythm during the races and things just happen that little bit slower, so he can almost enjoy his racing rather than things happening too quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly did round Sandown in the Tingle Creek. It looked as if they were always going a stride faster than he wanted to, whereas at Ascot over 2.5 he was always travelling. And there was even a moment at Aintree that if it didn't look it was going to happen, but then actually stamina really did kick in. They go a good gallop round Liverpool, and Hoy Signor, he's not a bad yardstick, and I think he's a very good horse, and he surely made it a good test of stamina, and that's what we've obviously got.
And you might have quite a strong hand in sort of the stay-in chase division this year, because you've also got Chantry House who's back.
He's in good form. I'm really pleased with him. He had a horrible fall at Wetherby. He actually fractured a little bone in his neck. But to be fair, I wouldn't put too much I wouldn't attach too much importance to that. That was easily mended. I mean, it didn't need any restructuring or anything. He seems well. He's schooled well. Wouldn't even mind thinking of starting off with the hurdle race, but we'll see where we go.
Because he's a horse I know that you've always sort of held in quite high regard.
Yeah, he looked good. He won the Cotswold Chase the year before, and then things went wrong. But he was I think he's just come back and looks and feels really well at the moment.
Mr. Coffee, cracking run in the Grand National few last year for Strider. So I thought, oh, Nicky Henderson may have broken his Aintree hoodie, but it wasn't to be. But I would assume that all roads lead there again.
Well, yeah, but they do and they don't.
If he
Because
gets in.
he won't get in as he stands. So we've got to concentrate on going up. He's got to. He wouldn't have got in the last 5 years.
He's actually still a maiden, isn't he, over fences?
He is.
Yeah.
But, winning a novice chase round Timbuktu isn't actually going to get him. He needs to go up 3 or 4 pounds. I'm thinking a lot about this Grand National. I don't disagree with them. But on the other hand,
It straight away rules 6 horses out, whichever way you look at it.
Sorry?
It straight away rules 6 horses out, whichever
Well,
way you look at
I
it.
thought I had 3 that I was thinking about, and none of them would get in. They would have got in last year. They won't get in this year, as they stand at the moment. I spoke to Ian Renton yesterday. I've come up with a really good idea, and I think Unibet can probably take it on. As you do on the flat when you have a big handicap, you have the Gold Cup and the Silver Cup. So we can have Division 2. We can have a 0 to 150. I know why they can't, because you can't put the fences back quickly. But there'll be 40 horses that want to run that won't get in, which is a bit sad. Sad for us, because I say I've got to concentrate on getting 3 horses moved up to get them to 1-4. I think it'll have to be 146 probably. Certainly no less.
And the other horse...
Well, the other one I'm certainly thinking of is Fantastic Lady.
Yeah.
She was second in the Topham and she loves it.
And how sort of far forward is Mr. Coffee? We like to see him pretty imminent?
Well, he wants soft ground. So I'm not exactly rushing. And he stays very well. But I would think, if we were taking the Grand National, if we were going to get in, I think the one thing I would cut out is probably Cheltenham. This year will be the short break again. It'll only be 3 weeks. And I think if you were taking the Grand National seriously, I'm not saying we weren't taking it seriously last year, but he ran in the National Hunt Chase, which he could run in again this year. Probably the first horse ever to run in the National Hunt Chase 3 years running and get placed in it.
He's one of the best maiden novice chasers you've got in the yard, isn't he?
I know, but I mean, a novice has run the Grand National a couple of years ago, didn't it? So, I wouldn't worry about that. He's got all the experience in the world. We've just purely got to concentrate on getting his handicap mark up. And, we're going to have to box clever here, because if you get it up, you don't want to risk it going back down again. So we've just got to find the right race to go and... That's just the first thing to do, is try and win a race, because bear in mind he hasn't won one yet.
What about City Chief? Because he's a horse who could be quite progressive over fences this
He could
year.
be. He's not the biggest horse in the world, but he's always jumped very well, and he stays very, very well. Yeah, I mean, he'd be on the short list.
Okay. We'll just switch back to the hurdlers as we're talking about the sort of stable big guns. And Champ, obviously you're not going to go back over fences with him. Just the sort of staying races again over hurdles.
Staying races over hurdles, he and Marie's Rock, I think will almost certainly she'll move up to 3. So they'll be creeping around in those sort of Newberries and long walks and those sort of races, which, hopefully lead to somebody being ready for the Stayers Hurdle.
Because I know last year you were umming quite a lot about what to do with Marie's Rock, but you decided sort of she will sort of go down that
Well, we'd always had
long-distance
one
route.
golden aim, which was the Mare's Hurdle.
Yeah.
That didn't really work, but she was very impressive on New Year's Day, over 2.5, but she proved she stayed 3 miles at Aintree, so I think she'll definitely be going 3 miles. I'd say she'll start at Newbury. The race that Champ won last year, whether Champ's ready for that, or we might... Again, we've always had the slight idea that Champ was a very good fresh. He's won first time out and after long breaks. So he could go straight to the long walk.
What about First Street?
We have schooled him over fences, and he was very, very good. It's an option. Doesn't make life that much easier, but you have got the odd novice chase, 2 mile novice chase, that isn't a handicap. 99% of them are handicaps, so there's not really a great incentive to go novice chasing, which is the sad part about the programme as it stands. They're not encouraging these horses to go novice chasing because they're not giving them any races. I mean, you can run in a novice handicap chase, yeah, but I mean, what's the point in running a handicap hurdle?
Are you looking at fences with him primarily because you think he's already played his cards over hurdles?
Yes, I
now?
think I think we know where he is over hurdles. He's not quite a Group 1 horse, that's, but he's good. That's a listed race at Kempton on Sunday, so that he's been working very nicely. He's in good form.
We saw Lucia this morning as well. She's looking in good shape, and again, she was probably a little bit unlucky at Aintree, wasn't she?
She was at Aintree. The disappointing thing about Cheltenham this year was I thought we had a very strong bunch of mares going into the mares novice hurdle and the mares hurdle itself, and didn't really work out. But they've all come back and done the right thing since. So we just sort of put a line through that and do it all again. Not that there'll be novices again.
And how forward is she?
She's done a couple of bits of work. We had an idea of running her on the flat. I wouldn't rule it out, but I think that'll be for the spring.
Nicky, I know Steel of March was probably your biggest disappointment at the festival last year because you didn't get, unfortunately, to see him running the Potemps because he picked up a little bit of a setback literally days before. But how's he been over the summer and come back looking well?
Yeah, good. He's had a lovely summer at Sandringham and he's coming. Yeah, he looks very big and very well. He's had a bit of treatment to his back. No, he looks great. I mean, it was a pity because, we got nicely qualified for the Potemps final. He got a good weight, and I was quite excited about him. I would think we'll probably go down the same road and try and get him there and get qualified and have another crack at it.
Theatre Glory, and again, a nice mare. So I suppose she fits into the similar sort of category of Queen's Rock. You've got quite a nice sort of hand in that division.
Yeah, we have. And again, the mares.
Yeah.
That'll be the objective. And, some good races on the way. She's, there's a good handicap in her anyway.
And Under Control, I think I spoke to you in your Unibet blog, you said, not quite sure what we've got here, but she's proven that she's actually pretty smart.
She was. She probably didn't know enough for the novice last March. She'd only had a couple of runs. She'd been very impressive. But then she came out at the end at Sandown and won that valuable novice hurdle. Actually, two of our new recruits last year, they finished first and second. And, I'm hoping they're both going to progress. We think... she's an absolute sweetie that's Under Control. She's not the biggest. She's not, you wouldn't pick her out in a crowd, but she's effective.
A horse called the Carpenter, who I know has had a few sort of training problems down the years, but from what we saw last year, I think probably the patience has been rewarded because he looks as if he could be a proper top-notcher. Is he going to stay over hurdles? Or
No, he definitely goes novice chasing. He's got Chaser written all over him. And yeah, you just wouldn't know quite. He had 3 runs and he won all 3. And to be honest, he was impressive all 3 times. So he hasn't seen a fence yet. He came in late and he needed quite a bit of work done on him to get him back into shape, to be honest with you. So he is a bit behind. But he wouldn't mind a bit of soft ground anyway. He'll soon be in action. Well, he won't be in action soon. I should think he'll be December before he's ready. Yeah, Doosan, I'm very happy with him. By the same token, I was never happy with him last season. I don't know where he went, missing, without permission, AWOL. He was never... The only time I saw him where he looked he was coming back to himself was in the Scottish National at the end, when he'd actually, for the first time, travelled and jumped through a race. Then he got knocked over halfway down the back straight the second time, but at which point he was going very, very well. Far too early to be able to tell, but it looked more like him Whereas before he hadn't jumped, he hadn't travelled, he wasn't doing anything. This time he's looking in cracking good form at the moment. So it's fingers crossed. He might just have sort of, I don't know, just crossed the road and things coming right again. Hope so. He's a good horse.
As well as the established stars, Nicky, it's always nice to learn of some sort of, unknowns from the Seven Barrows stable, and lots of them owned by JP and Joe Donnelly and so forth. We kick off with one owned by JP, Jericho de Ripponnet. What's this one been showing you?
He hasn't been here very long. He's a gorgeous looking horse. Won his point in the north of Ireland. Wilson Dennison had him. He catches your eye every day. You can't help but notice him. I don't know. I haven't done any more than canter with him, but he looks the right sort of horse to me.
And you'll start down the bumper route?
I don't know. I mean, bumpers are great in the spring for the young horses that aren't going to, just for an education run. I'm not necessarily so in favour of them at this time of the year. There are various ones you might do it with, fillies that can win one are useful. But a lot of them, if they point appointed, I'm not sure they're not better to get on with the proper job. They've got to get their experience over hurdles in order to take them somewhere later in the season. So I'm more inclined to go straight over hurdles with them, to be honest with you. There's one or two there that are definitely, you've got a big chasing type of horse, I'd get on and go over hurdles with him. And I would have thought he's more likely to do that than go flat racing.
Okay, so Jericho de Ripponnet could be named to follow. Another horse that is like to carry the same silks is a relative of Epatante Joyeuse. What can you tell us about her?
Yeah, we had her last year actually, and she was quite backward and had niggly little issues here and there, but she's perked up quite a lot this autumn. She looks a different animal altogether. Looks much sharper, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure she'll want to cut in the ground, so wouldn't be in a great rush. But she looks as if she's come on leaps and bounds, to be honest with you.
A horse who's a real striking individual is Immortal, who showed some smart form last year, but I sort of fear you were just scratching the surface with him.
Oh, well, I mean, I would have liked to have won at the time. I'm now rather grateful.
You've got a novice now, though, for this season.
Then he wouldn't have been a novice now. He's only had 2 runs. He was second both times, both at Sandown, both to horses trained by Gary Moore. And he was a big baby, and I just think he might be, again, he's a gorgeous-looking horse and moves beautifully. He's got great balance and presence, and I love him.
And I also think that carries the same silks is south of the border.
Yeah, we bought him in a race, in a sale at Sandown, after he'd won a point for Derek O'Connor. And actually, I think it was Derek's first winner that he trained. And that was early, obviously, I think it was the Tingle Creek meeting. So we did give him 1 run in a bumper at Foss Lass, and he won really nicely. He's all ready to go straight over hurdles. He's done everything well, everybody likes him. And
Sir Gino?
He's a different kettle of fish altogether. He's a juvenile, 3-year-old, had 1 run at Auteuil in a race called the Wild Monarch, which is for unraced 3-year-olds over hurdles, so they can't have run in anything. Historically, it's been a very successful race. A lot of good horses have come out of it. He won. I think it was a good heat. I think William Mullins bought the second, and Sergino was the winner. Fine-looking 3-year-old, and I hope he'll be out sort of before Christmas. I'm a bit short on 3-year-olds. I could do with some more. Hope Sergino, if Sergino's good enough, maybe we don't need any more, but I hope he'll be exciting.
Well, you said you may be short on 3-year-olds, but you have got one, a lovely filly by Blue Brazil called Owl. What can you tell us about her?
That you won't see much of her this year, or this season, because she's only a National Hunt 3-year-old as opposed to Sergino, who is it already won a hurdle
Yep.
race. Owl is just the most beautiful thing you've seen. It's out of a very good mare called Petticoat Tails, who sadly died not very long ago, and so did Richard Aston, which was of great, great sadness to us all, because he had, and Sally Aston had bred Owl, and we bought her in the May sale at Doncaster. She's just the most, if you wanted to see a seriously good-looking horse, I'd choose her to be the model. If it had two legs, you'd fancy it something rotten. Okay, spread out then.
Dodger the Great we haven't seen since he was impressive over hurdles at Kempton over a year ago now.
Yeah.
We've seen him this morning, so hopefully he's
He
fit
was
well.
all but ready to run in the spring. And he won he's unbeaten. And he won a novice hurdle at Kempton, and he struck into himself. It was a bad injury, and he had to have a year off, and we were not that optimistic about it actually working. But he came into training last year for the second half of the season, and to be fair, he was all ready to run when the ground dried up rather quickly. But at least we got a good 3 months' work into him, so that it's not as if he's coming back to starting after the Kempton injury. He had a good spring preparation, and so he only went out for 3 or 4 weeks. He belongs to Kenny Alexander of honeysuckle fame, and Kenny is, his great mate was Doddy Weir, and consequently we have Doddy the Great, and everything Doddy the Great earns goes to the Doddy Weir Foundation, which is great. Doddy Weir sadly died, but his name lives on in the foundation and in the horse. So, it would be lovely if he could just be a very good horse, and long may he remain unbeaten. But that's probably not the most important thing in the world, but I still think he has a big future.
Over fences?
He could probably go over fences. He hasn't got a lot of experience. He's only had a couple of bumpers in a hurdle race, or two. He is a chaser in the making, yes.
What about Jet Power? Because he was so impressive on his debut for you at Newbury, and then was perhaps disappointing for many after
Well, he was
that.
horrible the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we obviously had a problem, but hopefully we've ironed that out. He's back in work. He worked on Saturday, and he went very well. I mean, potentially he's a good horse. He's in that nasty position where he's only he's had 2 runs over hurdles, but isn't a novice. You could go chasing with him, but again, he's got to get a mark anyway. So, whether you go chasing or hurdling.
Does he still show you quite a lot at home?
He goes well at home, yeah. So he's but just because they're not very flashy at home doesn't mean they're not very good.
No.
He does it nicely without being spectacular.
And what can you tell us about Altior's half-brother, Monticom, who we saw twice last year in Birmingham?
Yeah, we gave him a couple of runs, but he was probably very weak. He's come back in a much stronger individual. He really does look the part. Yeah, he goes nicely, and he did a bit of work on Saturday, and it was certainly better than anything he showed us last year.
Would you give him one more run in a bumper, or just go straight over hurdles?
I think he'd go over hurdles. He jumps very, very well.
And Nicky, nice to attract some new owners to the yard. Oliver Harris has got a few with you this time. What about Willmount, who was impressive at Doncaster for Neil Mulholland last year?
It was. What was interesting there was that we were in the summer. I mean, I didn't know much about Willmount, I must admit, but we were looking at in the Derby sale at Fairyhouse, and I'd rather taken a shine to a filly by Diamond Boy. Everybody said, "You must buy it. You got to buy that. Its brother is seriously good." And I did buy this mare. She's here, but what I didn't realise was this brother that is seriously good suddenly, out of the blue, pitches up here. So I bought this filly on the grounds that if Wilmount is as good as they say it is, it might be winning serious novice hurdles this year, and I'm going to be sitting on its sister, which is consequently going to be worth a fortune. And so I am sitting on its sister, but its prospects are actually now in my hands. I'm going to be responsible for whether she becomes a very valuable mare or she isn't. I mean, she might be good enough anyway, but if Wilmount turns out to be as good as some people say he is, then I'll be in clover both ways. A lovely looking horse.
What's Wilmount shown you since he arrived?
I've only just started to did his first bit of work on Saturday.
Okay. And as I said, in the same ownership, a son of Kingston Hill called Kingston Pride, who was purchased at the Cheltenham sale, point-to-point winner.
Yeah, he just started to do some work. I mean, you like what you see at the moment, but it's early days.
And Shanno Bob, another one for the Donnellys.
Yeah, it sort of disappointed me a bit last season, but I think he's sort of coming into himself. I mean, you go straight over hurdles, and probably over a bit of a distance as well.
Break My Soul.
Yeah, he's another of Ollie Harris's. Yeah, a nice mare. I mean, again, only just started to do something. They haven't been here very long.
Horses that were here last year and both won their bumpers for you, for James and Jean Potter Limited. Call the Dance, a nice filly by Cave Tara out of Hora, won the bumper at Southall.
Well, obviously we know Hora well because I trained her. She won her bumper. There's two nice fillies there that won bumpers. Or one actually I think was only second. She won a bumper at Southall. Yeah, and then there's a filly called By the Grace of Midland Parks. And they're sort of very similar types. They go well, they do a lot together, they school very well. Actually, By the Grace didn't win. She was second in her bumper. And we probably would let her... she's a GBB bred, so there's the bonuses to be chasing with her. And I would have thought we'd probably go bumpering with her, whereas Call the Dance would probably go, she's won a bumper. So she wants to get on and go over hurdles, I would think. And
she shaped with promise on that first run at Ludlow, and wouldn't have been a big surprise to see her win as easy as she did at Southall.
No, she did it well. I mean, again, she does everything right. She's not enormous or anything. Aura was quite small herself. I wouldn't say Call the Dance is small, but it's not a great big chasing type of animal. But she goes very nicely, very straightforward. She's sweet filly.
And speaking of families that you know well, you've got Chock-a-Block, who's out of Chock-a-Wocka by Blue Brazil, of course. You've got Chump, who was the daughter of Chumbawamba, so a long family there that you know well with Chock-a-Block.
Yeah, Chock-a-Block we like. He's quite forward, actually, and he's not far off a run. He's schooled very nicely, and he's been working good, and he showed us he won his bumper. Yeah, I'm looking forward to him.
A horse that won his one and only start last year was maybe a bit of a surprise to you because you had two in the race, was East India Express, who scored at Kempton. Fortunately didn't run in the big sales race at Newbury, but how's he been since we last saw him?
Well, it goes back really, when I say it surprised me to win. What I didn't want, I was aiming at the sales race with East India Express. Thought he was all right. But what I didn't want was a £5 penalty for the sales race. We ran two in the bumper at Kempton. Nico rode what we call Pablo, which is actually in fact called Io Las de Mu. And as none of us can pronounce it, it got christened Pablo. I mean, if you ask anybody in the yard, where's Io Las de Mu, they'd look very blank at you because everybody calls it Pablo. But Nico rode that and got a bit of a shock when Sam Tristan Davis, who had sort of, his instructions really were to bury it and learn a lot. The more you slotted in amongst horses, and bury them in a race, the more they're going to learn how to race in the pack and this, that, and the other. And I hardly I expected it to be in the pack. I didn't expect it to come out of the pack like a bullet. 2 furlongs out, completely ran away with the race. It wasn't the plan, but he won so easily. We actually thought it was quite funny and didn't really thought, well, £5 penalty isn't going to stop it. The only person who was furious was Nico. Well, not really, but I mean, because he knew he'd be riding it next time, so he wasn't. But it's not as if Pablo was second, because he wasn't. But unfortunately, when he came home from the Kempton race, he got a cough almost straight after. Took him a long time to throw it off. It's the sort of thing that happens on your first run. You stress them, and they've probably been to the racecourse, got in contact with something nasty there, and it takes them a long time to throw it off because it's comes straight on top of a race, and you know it probably hits them harder. So he just finished turning him out. He never ran again. He didn't need to run again, except for in the sales race. And as we'd missed that, we didn't bother to try again.
So are you sort of kicked straight on over hurdles this turn?
Yeah, he's all schooled and ready to go.
Gentleman's Relish, Nicky, a horse who was quite well supported on his debut at Newbury.
Well, that was in the sales race that East India Express couldn't run in. Yeah, I thought he'd run really well. He actually ran a shocker. It was horrible ground, but to be honest, he was never travelling at all. I know not why. We thought he'd run really well. I would suggest that with him that I would give him another run in a bumper, because he can't have had a good experience, and I really don't want to complicate things, chucking hurdles into the mix when I really need the horse to show us what he can do first. And he's a big, strong horse by Doyen, and he'd want a galloping track. So he's working away at the moment, and yeah, I would give him another run in the bumper before he goes hurdling.
And a horse who won on its second start in a bumper, having finished second at Wincanton, then went out and scored at Warwick impressively in what looked a good race, was Kintail. How high at the pecking order do you think he could be?
I think it was a good race. Firstly, because we were third in it as well, with what I think is a decent horse called Ideal de Board. I would probably sort of thought that was, I was thinking Ideal de Board would possibly win that. In fact, Kintail did. There were 3 of them finished a long way clear, and the second horse was a horse of Skelton's that won very, very easily the other day, and then was second in the Persian War on Saturday. And say, I think that was a good race. And Kintail, yes, he'd had the benefit of a run at Wincanton before Warwick, but that was a tidy performance that day, and he's beautifully bred. He's by Blue Brazil, and jumps well, all ready to go.
Avado Kedavra, are you a fan of Harry Potter?
I've only just been informed that it's got something to do with Harry Potter.
Don't worry, I'll find out myself today as well.
I'm afraid I just call it abracadabra, but it's evidently not. I don't know what it is. It sounds something very gruesome, apparently.
But is he a horse who's got ability? Would there be some magic there on the track?
I would. He's a horse I bought at Doncaster Sales last year, and JP has sort of said he'd like to have him, so he went back, and he actually only came back to us. He's by Milan. He's unraced. Derek O'Connor had him last spring just to educate him for JP, and at the moment we're liking what we see.
Let's just stick with a few owned by JP. A few of these now have had experience over hurdles. Impoise Trois.
He was an extraordinary horse because it shows you absolutely zero at home. Consequently, his first run, I ran it over a trip because I thought it was so slow. And that actually turned out to be a massive mistake. It ran far too free. And I mean, it's never picked the bridle up before. So we've dropped it back to 2 miles and it duly won. It's a very nice horse. So, I mean, whether he stays over hurdles or... I would think he'd stay over hurdles, yes.
Okay. What about Iberico Lord?
Well, he again, they'd be very similar. They both came from the sort of French AQPS bumper route, which has been very successful. Charlie Swan buys these for JP. He scouts France into... he's down at all the provincial tracks, talent spotting, and buys some really nice horses. And these two came over this time last year. And, I think they've both got big futures.
What about No Ordinary Joe, a smart handicapper, ran well in the Martin Pipe at the festival?
He did. He ran a great race in that. I mean, he's a useful fella. He really ought to be jumping a fence this term, I would think.
And where are we at with Pentland Hills?
Well, he went AWOL last year, rather like I mentioned with Dusat, and I don't know, he came back in, his coat looked awful, and we couldn't get it to look right. To be fair, he won his first start, was his first run back, and we ran him in a flat race, because he's so lowly rated on the flat. Obviously very, very highly rated over hurdles, having won the Triumph, and a Grade 1 at Aintree. Then had missed a year, came back, we gave him a run on the flat, which he won, albeit only narrowly, for a horse that it appeared had about 3 stone in hand. As I say, his coat never looked right, he never shone. He looks a different kettle of fish altogether this term. He's come back looking great, and let's hope he's put all that behind him. Looks as if he has, I think.
And you ran him over fences last season. Is that the plan again this year, or are you going to...
Well, that was a silly thing to do, to be honest with you. It was totally my fault. He was his greatest asset was always his jumping. Brilliant jumper of hurdles from day one. And he schooled very well over fences, so I thought, let's crack on, go straight over fences. We'd had a run on the flat to get him ready. And I broke one of my own rules, and I don't like running them at the 2 courses, Cheltenham and Ascot. I think I've caused more issues than I care to remember by making their debut over fences at either track, because I just think they're too big a test for them. Lots of other people have run them at Ascot and Cheltenham first time out over fences, and they've been perfectly all right. I find if I do it, I frighten the living daylights out of them, and myself, and my jockey, and consequently shouldn't do it. Pentland was so good, I thought, let's go to Cheltenham. And same thing happened again. It happened to Mike Bite. I had to put him back over hurdles for a year. Yeah, he finished up the best jumper of fences in the world. But we took him to Cheltenham the first time, and I mean, he fell over he got to about the 4th fence. Poor Nico pulled him up. Couldn't handle it at all. And Ascot does the same to them, in my opinion. So I try and make sure they've had some experience elsewhere before they go there.
So, fair to say, hurdles for him for the time being?
Well, for the time being, let's just try and get him back on track.
Yeah.
It's not very easy when you're handicap rated as high as he is. But just if we could get him going and sort of run a respectable race over hurdles, then I'd be happy to go back over fences.
And a horse, I suppose, with similar sort of profile to Pentland Hills is Call Me Lord. He's been here for a few years. Perhaps fencing or chasing wasn't his game, but he's very adept over hurdles, isn't he?
And he had a fantastic season last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he really did. He was incredibly consistent. He was in great form all season, and he's feeling great at the moment. No, we won't go chasing again.
Quick line on Captain Morgs.
Yeah, good. I was pleased with him the other day over fences, and we'll stay over fences.
Yeah.
He probably wants 3 miles. I mean, he won a good race at Cheltenham over 3 miles, so we know he stays. That was 2.5 for his first run back over fences the other day, and he travelled and jumped really well, so we'll press on down that road.
And what sort of vibes are you getting with regards to Bold Endeavour? Because I know you ran him over fences and he's been over hurdles as well at the festival. Where do you think his future lies?
Probably over hurdles. I don't know. I was talking to Tony Barney's owner about it yesterday, and yeah, we actually schooled him over fences on Saturday. He's a long horse, if you like, long-backed horse. And consequently, he doesn't bend his back terribly well. You know, those sort of horses, they need to do that to jump fences. And I don't think he finds it as... He's a good jumper. Again, he won his first 2 novice chases, and I then went to Ascot with him. And he got in a muddle straight away.
Yeah.
His jumping, which had been so good the first 2 times, went to pieces. Now, I'm not necessarily blaming Ascot. I mean, I'm not blaming Ascot at all. It's a great course. It's just not one for the faint-hearted. And I'm not saying he's faint-hearted, but he found those fences difficult to jump. And that's why we brought him back over hurdles. And he had a pretty strong campaign. He ran a very good race at Haydock, didn't he, in the end, or in the spring as well. He's a pretty useful hurdler, so why complicate it?
Persian Time, Carrots and Silks of Max McNeil, who was a smart novice over hurdles last year. Are you going to continue that route or go over the biggies?
To go chasing.
Yeah.
He's already schooled and he was very, very good. He's a strong traveller. You know, that he ran at Ayr, and I have to say, he actually he turned into the straight, saw a bit of daylight, and literally took off. Yeah, I mean, he was going to win by minutes from the second last to the last, but he'd done too much and he'd been there too soon.
Nicky, Dom Wave, a son of Yorton sire Jenka Wave. What's this one been showing you?
Nothing at the moment, because he's not even in fast work at all. He's only just arrived here. He's a very solid horse. He's won a couple of races in Paris, and looks a really likeable individual, very, very strong. He'll stay over hurdles. He's got a double penalty, but we'll see. Honestly, I can't tell you anymore. He's only counted.
That could be a nice prospect, a name to
I would
follow,
hope so. Yeah.
Okay. Just the final couple more, Nicky. Russian Ruler. Are you going to go over fences with him?
Yep, he will.
Yeah.
That's the plan. It took him a bit of time to win a race last year, but we finally got that done. A lot of conjecture over what his ideal trip is. Might be only 2 miles. It was 2.5 at Newbury when he jumped the last and looked if he was home and hosed, but then just got caught. Certain opinions said he didn't stay. I don't know. I'd be amazed if he didn't stay, but so we'll probably start over 2 miles anyway.
Okay. Walking on Air, high-class hurdler, of course, Carrots and Silks of Doreen Tabor. How's he?
He's lovely. Great big son of Walking in the Park, and he's big, strong, grumpy, very, very grumpy horse.
Bit like me in the morning.
No, he's a bit like all the Walk in the Parks, to be honest with you. They're funny characters. You know, they take a bit of understanding. Jonbon's got his traits. This horse has got his. There's a filly out there that would rather kill you than kiss you, that's for sure. But, you know, he's a very good sire.
Walking on Air has definitely got the size to jump a
He's
fence.
a big, big, solid horse. We were always going per temps with him last year. He won his qualifier well at Exeter. And he's just a horse that's been... He had no luck at all last season when, on the important days, in the per temps final, he was all dressed and ready to go coming down the hill. But no, he knocked on 10 different doors and everybody said no. And he couldn't get out. And then we went to Punchestown for a valuable 3-mile hurdle there. Jumped like an aeroplane the whole way round, travelling just beautifully, in the perfect place. Smashed the third last, broke it into bits, and did the same at the second last. And he still ran a very good race, but why, I just don't know. He completely took his eye off the ball, which is very unlike him. As I say, the two big attempts last year, just things didn't go right, and that was unlucky. But he schooled over fences. He's been very good, so fingers crossed.
Okay, and Wise Guy?
Like him, he'll go novice chasing. He's old school and ready to go. I think they have a lot of fun with him.
So let's just sort of have a little division with the fillies of all sort of different genres. We'll kick off with Fantastic Lady, who has had runs over the national fences. What's her likely first target?
Probably back there for the Grand Sefton. She won that the mare's 3 mile novice chase at Market Raisin, which actually is on the same day. Well, it's not a novice chase, it's just 3 mile mare's chase at Market Raisin. And she'll definitely run that Saturday. I think the idea is for Tweed Skirt to go to Market Raisin for the mare's listed chase, and Fantastic Lady to go to Aintree. She loves Aintree. She was second in the Topham last year, jumped like an absolute bird. We have an idea that she could go cross country after that to see how far she'd stay. Now with that, we're obviously saying we know we go around Aintree. If we find we stay 4 miles, then it's obvious what you do. She would be in the danger area of missing the cut for the Grand National, if that was proven to be the right road. She's got to go up. So maybe if we could win the Sefton, then that'll do the job anyway. And then we've got to see if she stays. Tweed Skirt, she's a good mare. She's been placed in limited, won a couple of good novice chases last year. I'd like to go and win a listed race with her. She'd have a good chance at Market Raisin.
And we saw you ran Power Fury in the Adonis at Kempton last February, and then she ran in the Grade 1 at Aintree. Obviously, if you win those races, yes, it's great, but then you lose your novice status and you can only be a novice until November. So you've got that novice status with her all season
won,
now.
Great.
Yeah.
She ran a very good race in the Adonis. She was bang there at the second last. I can't say we'd wound her up particularly for it, because really that was exactly what we were trying to do. And so she's got the experience and now ready to go and get on with the job properly. Lovely, big, strong mare. Won a couple of races on the flat. She's a talented mare with loads of scope.
And Arc Light.
Same sort of thing. She won her first 2 novice hurdles. Should have got black type the next time. We're going to do something a bit original in that if we run her in a novice chase, you've got your £7 mare's allowance and another 7 for being a 4-year-old. She was actually due to run in the free handicap at Chepstow last Saturday, and no point in running her in that ground, it was heavy. But so we're going back to the chasing route again next Sunday, hopefully at Kempton.
Okay, and Aston Martini, very impressive on debut in a bumper.
I like her a lot. It's very well named because it's bred by Richard and Sally Aston, and for some reason, being that it was owned by the late great Henry Ponsonby. Cocktails had to come into it somewhere, and we came up with Aston Martini. Sadly, both Richard and Henry have we've lost them both. 2 great friends, 2 great men.
And Floating Line, what can you tell us about her?
I like her a lot. She hasn't been with us long. She's a beautifully bred mare. She's had 1 run in a bumper before she came to us at Fakenham, where she was second. But I would think she's grown up a fair bit since then. I like her.
So quite high hopes for her.
I have.
Any high hopes for Excello?
Excello, I think, is an exciting horse. He's come over from France. He'd been placed in 2 or 3, I think, sort of Auteuil novice hurdles, which is always solid form. Then, as a 4-year-old, as they do in France, went chasing in the spring. Won his first chase round Auteuil, which means technically he's not a novice hurdle for this season, but he is a novice until December the 1st over fences. So our plan would be possibly, if I thought we could get 2 chases in before December the 1st, is to let him go novice chasing, and then he could come back, but he is still a novice hurdler. So then he could come back, and I hope he would then become a very high-class novice hurdler. He's seriously nice horse.
Now, we're going to split these into categories, and if you can just try and give me a horse for each one. So your most exciting novice chaser for this year going forward, which one is perhaps more forward than a few of the others, or has just shown that little bit more
I think I'd say Walking on Air or Persian Time.
Okay. And then the horses stepping through from bumpers to hurdles, which one are you most looking forward
Well, I
to?
think, again, very difficult. Very difficult. There were some very nice bumper horses in there. I might say Kintail, and it'll be something different. We'll say Kintail.
Which one are we which group who we most like to see earliest?
The first would be those two fillies, I would think, or Chock-a-Block, actually. He'll be the first to run. And then the two fillies By the Grace and Call the Dance.
And Nick, I know it's very, very early days, certainly in the bumper division for you, but is there anything that you just feel that horse could be ready to go and might just be showing a little bit more than you'd expect to run in the bumper?
Well, there were a few left over from last year that we didn't run for various reasons. That they might have been a bit backward, or we just ran out of time. Tradecraft, I would like. He's another Blue Brazil with a bit of a pedigree, and he showed us a bit. He looked as if he ought to win a bumper somewhere.
And finally, Nicky, who's the dark horse from Seven Barrows this season?
Well, Constitution Hill's quite dark.
Good job he's not a chestnut, because you couldn't get away with answering it that way otherwise.
You could have a bay one if you like. Well, there's one that struck. I mean, we were saying with a couple of horses, I hadn't been happy with them last year. They've come back, and you see a different horse. And it happens, thank goodness. They can go AWOL and bounce back. One I did not play very cleverly last year, Between Waters. She'd won a point in Ireland by Walk in the Park. She was very, very busy early on, and I couldn't even begin to train it till after Christmas, till we'd got her to settle down and relax a bit. And then when she did, she didn't show us very much. And we ran in a bumper, and to be honest, I should have gone hurdling with her. But in hindsight, that's one way, because now I'm in a much better position. She's totally different this term. She's nicely settled. We've changed the routine completely, and she's been very receptive to it. And consequently, she's starting to work properly, jump properly, behave properly. And I think she's a different mare, and she might be what we were hoping to see last year that we didn't.